The world held its breath. It was 1939, then the nightmare began. World War II erupted. It was a conflict unlike any before. Nations clashed, ideologies fought. The scale was immense, the suffering unimaginable. This war felt different. It felt terrifyingly real, almost too real, as if a dark, vivid film played out before everyone's eyes. The technology of war had advanced. It brought a new kind of horror, a hyper-realistic experience for those who lived it and for those who would later try to understand its sheer magnitude. The skies were no longer safe. They became a new battlefield, a terrifying theater of operations. Aircraft, once marvels of invention, became deadly weapons. They soared with grim purpose, carrying destruction, carrying fear. The visuals were stark, planes like dark birds of prey. Against a smoke-filled sky, the sounds were deafening. Engines roared, guns fired, bombs whistled down. This was not a distant abstract war. It was immediate, it was visceral. It was a daily struggle for survival, painted in fire and steel. This realism was not just in the machines, it was in the human experience. Young men, barely adults, climbed into cockpits. They faced death with every mission. On the ground, civilians looked up. They prayed for safety. The lines between soldier and civilian blurred. Bombs did not discriminate. Cities became targets. Homes became ruins. The war reached everyone. It touched every life. Its brutal reality was inescapable, a constant pressing weight on the human spirit. The tactics, too, seemed drawn from some future shock. Coordinated bombing raids, strategic targeting, air superiority became crucial. The side that controlled the skies held a powerful advantage. This focus on aerial dominance changed warfare forever. It brought a new dimension of terror. The enemy could strike from above, anywhere, anytime. This constant threat, this feeling of vulnerability. It was a defining feature of this hyper-realistic war, a war that seared itself into memory. The air battles were ferocious. They were a deadly ballet, Spitfires and Hurricanes against Messerschmitts and Zeros. These were the icons of the air war, each plane a marvel of engineering, each pilot a warrior. They flew into the heart of danger. Dogfights were chaotic swirls of motion, planes twisting, turning, diving, chasing, being chased. The sky filled with tracer fire. Bright lines of light, seeking their targets. Metal ripped, engines screamed. Smoke trailed from stricken aircraft, falling from the sky like broken birds. The technology was advancing at a terrifying pace. Faster planes, more powerful guns, better targeting systems. Bombers grew larger. They could fly farther. They could carry heavier loads. The B-17 Flying Fortress, the Lancaster. These giants lumbered through the air, bristling with machine guns. Their mission to deliver devastation. They flew in tight formations for mutual protection, yet they were still vulnerable to enemy fighters, to anti-aircraft fire, flak exploding around them, shrapnel tearing through fuselages. Courage was a pilot's closest companion. The tactics were brutal and efficient. Strategic bombing aimed to cripple industry, to break morale. Daylight raids were perilous. Night raids offered some cover, but navigation was a challenge. Pilots relied on skill, on instruments, on pure nerve. They flew through storms, through darkness, towards targets they often couldn't see, only knowing the destruction they would unleash. The psychological toll was immense for the air crews. For those below, the constant drone of engines, a herald of impending doom. Life in a bomber squadron was intense. Briefings in the early hours, the long flight to the target, the terrifying run through enemy defenses, then the long flight home, hoping to see friendly shores again. Many did not return. Empty bunks told silent stories. The bravery was astounding, the sacrifice profound. These young men faced death daily. They pushed the limits of endurance. Their actions, their skill, their fear. It all contributed to this hyper-realistic image of war, a war fought in 3 dimensions, high above the suffering earth. The destructive power of explosives reached new heights. Bombs became instruments of mass devastation. High explosives, incendiaries, blockbusters, each designed for a specific terrible purpose, to shatter buildings, to spread fire, to obliterate. When these bombs fell, the world shook. The sound was a physical blow, a monstrous roar, followed by the sickening crumble of structures. Cities that had stood for centuries turned to rubble in minutes. This was the raw power of modern warfare, unleashed upon populations. The experience on the ground was hellish. Air raid sirens wailed. A chilling sound. People scrambled for shelter. Basements, Anderson shelters, tube stations, anywhere to escape the rain of fire and steel. But sometimes there was no escape. Explosions ripped through streets. Fires raged uncontrollably, creating firestorms, sucking the oxygen from the air. The heat was intense, the smoke choking. For civilians, it was a lottery of life and death. A terrifying reality. Their homes, their lives, shattered by unseen enemies from above. The impact was not just physical. It was deeply psychological, the constant fear, the uncertainty, the loss of loved ones, the destruction of familiar surroundings. It scarred minds as much as it scarred landscapes. Soldiers too faced the horror of explosives, artillery shells, mortars, grenades, landmines. The battlefield was a place of constant sudden death. An explosion could come from anywhere, at any time. The concussive force, the shrapnel, the sheer terror. It was a relentless assault on the senses and on the soul. The visuals were apocalyptic. Cities burning, landscapes pockmarked with craters, twisted metal, charred remains. This was the face of total war, where the distinction between combatant and non-combatant eroded. The explosives didn't care. They simply destroyed. This indiscriminate power, this ability to reshape the very earth. It was a stark demonstration of humanity's capacity for destruction, a hyper-realistic vision of what happens when conflict escalates, when the tools of war become so incredibly potent, so terrifyingly effective. The hyper-realism of World War II's air warfare and its devastating explosives left an indelible mark on history. It changed the way wars were fought. It changed the way we saw conflict. No longer a distant affair of soldiers on a field, it became total. It became intimate in its horror. The images from that time, they are seared into our collective memory. The lone bomber against a vast sky, the burning city, the faces of survivors. These are not just historical records, they are warnings, they are testaments. The emotional impact resonates even now. Decades later, the fear, the loss, the courage, the resilience, these human stories are at the heart of the war's memory for those who lived through it. The memories were often too painful to speak of, yet they carried them, a heavy burden. For future generations, the task is to remember, to understand, not just the dates and battles, but the human cost, the sheer terror of a sky filled with bombers, the earth shaking from explosions. This reality must not be forgotten. The significance of these elements is profound. Aerial power became a dominant factor in military strategy. The threat of bombing shaped cities. It shaped foreign policy. The destructive potential of explosives, culminating in the atomic bomb. It ushered in a new age of anxiety, an age where humanity held the power to annihilate itself. This hyper-realistic war, it forced a reckoning with our own capabilities, with our own nature. The lessons are stark and they are enduring, reflecting on this period. We see the thin veil between civilization and chaos. The war showed how quickly that veil could be torn, the incredible realism of the air attacks, the shocking power of the bombs. They were not fiction, they were the lived experience of millions. Today, as we look back, it is crucial to feel the weight of that reality, to honor the memory of those who suffered and to strive for a world where such hyper-realistic nightmares remain confined to the pages of history and the frames of film, not our skies, not our cities, not again.